Good morning. Welcome back to Streaming Media Connect 2025. I'm Steve Nathans Kelly, Editor-in-Chief of Streaming Media Magazine and the Chair of Streaming Media Connect. And we are back for our second session of the event and second of the day, assessing AI's evolving role in live cloud streaming workflows. Before we get started, a few housekeeping notes. Um, as with all sessions, we're doing a giveaway at the end of this session. It's our Name That Tune. You must be the first person to correctly name the tune and the artist that you were just hearing as we walked in, as we joined the session. And the winner will receive a $50 Amazon gift card at the end of the session, but you must be present to win. The chat is open, so please chat amongst yourselves in the chat, and we will take Q&A at the end of the panel. So put your questions in the Q&A, and we'll get to as many as we can. Sessions from all 3 days of Stream Media Connect will be available on the Stream Media YouTube channel next week. The link will also be in the chat for that. And we'll be back here for the next Streaming Media Connect, August 19th to 21st. The call for speakers is open and the link is in the chat. We'll also be coming back live and in person October 6th to 8th in Santa Monica with our incomparable conference chair, the one and only Andy Beach, who you'll be seeing in just a few minutes. The full program is live now, and you can read all about it and register by following the links Bill is putting in the chat for that. And also the call for speakers is open. So even though the program is pretty well set, let us know what you want to speak about and what your area of expertise is, and we'll do our best to find a place for you in the program. Now I would like to welcome the Wizard of Windfall, Indiana, Rob Dillon of Dillon Media Ventures. How's it going, Rob?
Hey, good morning.
Good to see you. Take it away.
All righty. I'd like to first of all, thank everybody for joining us. I know it's fairly early on the West Coast, including two of our panelists who are calling in from the West Coast. Um, I'm Rob Dillon, doing my consulting on my own now, but previously I've got a journalism and news background, including 7, 8 years with Tribune Broadcasting as the digital operations director. Over 43, the digital operation, the streaming and video on demand operations of 42 TV stations and a cable network. Also have some time with Cox and Sinclair in there. And my last time I saw a paycheck was working for a company, a news startup out of Omaha called Straight Arrow News. I encourage you to check them out when you get a chance. Right now, this panel's right up my alley because I've spent the last few months going deep in the AI hole because we need to know what's going on in that area. So and that's the topic of this panel. So it kind of all fits together. So we'll start. I'll let the panelists introduce themselves. Let's start with the aforementioned Andy Beach.
Hey, Rob, good to see you.
Good to see you, Andy.
Yeah, I also am in the similar climate you are. I've stepped away from my corporate and enterprise role, and I'm more into the startup world these days. I've been advising a number of startups, working on a podcast with SMPTE that covers media tech and AI, and I'm very busy doing just a variety of consulting and writing, but mostly enjoying not getting up for 6 a.m. meetings with other parts of the business.
All right, Bhavesh.
Good morning, everybody. Bhavesh Upadhyaya. Been in the streaming space like with Rob for quite a while now, and I've had a chance to see everything from the operation side with iStream Planet to the product side with Warner Brothers Discovery and Video QoE. I'm currently a subject matter expert for the Streaming Video Technology Alliance, SVTA, and working on not only QoE and streaming operations, but also with my good friend Kyle Faber, now the chair of the AI committee, where we're looking at how can we use AI to really help internally all the different committees and groups organize their thoughts, their ideas, and get more standards published out there.
This panel, there's a lot of experience working with the Streaming Video Technical Association Alliance. I'm also a subject matter expert with them as well. And with that, our final panelist, Steph Lone.
Hey everybody, Steph Lone. I currently am the global leader for the solution architecture team for media, entertainment, games, and sports here at AWS. Prior to that, I have 25 years at a company called Paramount today, and was about last 8 years prior to coming over to AWS 3 years ago. I was the SVP of engineering for CBS Sports Digital. So had quite a background of doing things like streaming the Super Bowl, a few March Madnesses under my belt, etc. So great to be here.
Great. As you see, we've got a fantastic panel here, and this should be a great discussion. We're going to jump in with our first question, and we've all worked together on a document with questions in it and potential things to talk about. And the first question isn't a question I want to start with. I want to start with a very basic question that goes right along with our topic. What is AI's role right now, this minute, this second, in cloud streaming workflows? Andy, let you kick it off.
This very second, right now, this very moment.
Yes.
Gosh, I mean, there are literally dozens and hundreds of live use cases. The low-hanging fruit that we were talking about even a year ago were more operational, things like immediate transcripts, object detections. If it's in sports, being able to detect certain plays, those kinds of elements. But I think it started to move more into the engineering stack, and it's much more around like the dynamic provisioning of channels now, monitoring for frame drops and black and other operational pieces. So there are a host of areas that it has been migrating, but it is continuing to emerge and unblock new areas that basically just free up the human operators to focus on making a good live story.
Steph?
Yeah, I was going to say, look, many of our customers, I mean, like if I think back to like 2 years ago even, right? Like there was a lot of apprehension around AI, lots of things going on in the space like strikes and whatnot. And so I think many of our customers hit the fast forward button as soon as they were able to. And a lot of them, though, are still getting up to speed in just automation and efficiency phases, right? And the ones that are now doing that well are starting to move into like fully agentic, like this fully agentic work era, right? And you know, not everybody's there, and that's okay, right? We're seeing a lot of folks today using AI on repetitive tasks, right? Labor intensive tasks. So content tagging, like video clipping, upscaling, upresing, right? Basic editing. And I think all that, helps with the operational efficiency that we're seeing. And, some of our customers that are starting to move into like the AI powered tooling to optimize the video quality control and the real-time content moderation. So I think there's a lot of ways that customers are using it in interesting ways today, including things like AI commentary. So I'll pause there and I'll see if Bhavesh wants to jump in.
Sure. And I want to pick up on the unblocking comment as well too, in terms of it's allowing people to not necessarily like focus on a problem that they're having, and all of a sudden now they can ask a question to a third-party global source that has knowledge about everything, and all of a sudden now they can do system-to-system interoperability without having to go through tons of Confluence pages or Jira tickets or whatnot. They can actually now unblock themselves, and I've had this with one of the my consulting customers. After teaching them a little bit more about that, they were, instead of taking 3 days to solve a problem with identity management setups inside AWS for their service, they were actually able to ask a question and actually get unblocked within days. And now all of a sudden they're able to continue on to their workflow and start doing more of the DevOps type of stuff. There is a maturity that's required, to your point, Steph, that if you are not, there's a lot of thought that has to be put into a very trusted AI system, and I think that's not quite there yet because you don't know when the hallucinations are going to kick in, and so I think a lot of people are, at least to get their toes into the water, need to look at the very tactical situations where they can take a non-deterministic system and try to put some boundaries on it to say, give me answers, but I'm going to put boundaries on your answers so that I don't have to worry about you insulting my viewers or whatnot.
Interesting. Okay. Andy, you started to touch on this and we'll go on with it. The evolution now of AI. I've got some certain thoughts on some things that I'll save till later, but where you started in on it, and I'd like to hear everybody, not only deeper thoughts from you, but everybody else of where it's going. I mean, you brought up it's becoming what was your term? I loved it. It's no longer a feature, it's an operating like. Let's expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it was a very shiny object, to Steph's point, like 2 years ago. Everybody was just sort of starting to crack open and play around with it. So we all had these idea of the use cases where we were going to use it, but we increasingly find it, to sort of the Bhavesh's point, digging into these other areas. It's become a great troubleshooting tool. I mean, I had already seen this in sort of DevOps pipelines of using things like GitHub Copilot and other codecs and other coding tools along the way. But we're seeing operational teams also adopt it, particularly in a scenario where you can have an agent-based piece just sort of sitting on the line in a Slack thread or even on a phone call with the team. So you're not really changing your workflow to accommodate the AI that's in the scenario. The AI is just adapting to the workflows that you already have and that you're familiar with as part of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd jump in too and say, like at NAB, we decided to kind of show off an entire agentic workflow that customers could use today, right? And this was really about how to operate more seamlessly and take leveraging LLMs to extract like raw insights from video content, as an example, right? And then create these workflows that need to be in specific formats or into downstream systems, and taking like a sports clip example, right? All the analysis of the information for game highlights and practice footage and post-game interviews, and they all have to go to different places. And so like social media sites, websites, internal corporate sites, and so customers see that as a lot of cumbersome, heavy lifting, very manual intensive. And so we built out kind of this agentic solution to create this like supervisor agent, right? And it had a bunch of underlying agents, like a film agent that kind of looked for, I don't know, maybe some Swifty, shots, as well as, sports agent looking up venues and team lookups and, player lookups, and synopsis agents and QC agents to do self-check and make sure that the compliance standards are met, or the right application of cropping was done for like a social media site and stuff like that. So I think we're really seeing that adoption, to me, with customers, feels like it's fast forwarding quite a bit from those early days into a lot of these operational pieces and operational tasks that can now be handled pretty seamlessly with the use of AI.
I think with the tools like what Steph's been talking about, you've got these very mature companies who are creating these agentic workflows to allow folks who don't necessarily know how to do it. All of a sudden, they've got a massive boost in their operational workflows that they didn't have to now spend a year or two bringing up teams, training teams, and getting up to speed. They're able to take advantage of all of the hard work that other people have done. It's kind of like my favorite analogy is the Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom, where he just scatters the sand over the invisible bridge and shows people, hey, by the way, there's an easier way for you to go through it. I think there's a lot of these frontier companies and frontier models are able to do that. And all of a sudden now it allows a smaller company or a budget constrained company to suddenly see faster ways to get their products out to market than ever before.
Yeah, totally.
Great, great. Um, I was going to save this one for a little later, but we've all kind of hit on it now. As you said, a couple years ago, AI was just this shiny thing. You were either scared to death of it or you were curious and you were ready to jump in.
Or both.
Or both. Yeah. And some of us still are both. But
Mhm.
Steph, you mentioned being at NAB. I wasn't at NAB this year, but I can just imagine what it was like because every time there's a new shiny object, every vendor booth, every booth has something powered by AI. It's AI toilet paper or AI this or that. And I can just imagine what it was because it was that way with OTT in a box and several other shiny things that have come through our industry in the last 10 years. Um, so like I said, in my head, I knew exactly what the show floor looked like. So, all I missed was the vendor parties. But
We do throw some good parties, I will say.
But there's an interesting piece there, though. I will say, I think Rob, you're describing not NAB this year, but NAB last year, where I feel like the marketing in the booths was a lot of AI.
Mhm.
This year, interestingly, before I even got to the show floor, a couple people had said, I don't feel like there's as much AI this year. I don't
really,
understand what's going on. And then when I finally got to walk the floor, what I saw was the words AI were missing, but there was a lot of automation. There was a lot of time savings. There was a lot of, so I feel like the hype had moved beyond just the two letters,
The words,
and it
right?
was into the practical use cases that
Mhm.
people were defining. And if you asked enough questions, you got to the AI that was part of the solution, but it wasn't the marketing hype that was there.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I think that's why this will succeed. And actually, the good thing about AI is that, it's shiny object. Things are gonna like there's gonna be something amazing here. Every other week, there's another large language model that's being open source that's much better than the last one for cheaper price, etc. And I think in order to when you're jumping into AI, it actually pays to not be the first one out there to do something. It pays to not just to start throwing tools out there. It actually pays to think about what you want to get done. It actually benefits the architects. It benefits the thought leaders, the people who figure out what do I want it to do? How do I create and describe the problem that I'm trying to solve? And if you can think of it that way, then the tools will come and just be part of your solution instead of just saying, "Send you a new tool. Let me throw it against automatic translation, or let me throw it against and see if I can find good opportunities to throw an ad marker inside there." Yes, that's great, but where does that fit into your entire architecture?
Yeah.
What is it actually going to do for you?
And
Yeah,
that leads into where I'm sorry, Steph, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I think it's just about driving value for the customer, right? That to me is where,
Exactly.
I think it's moved from to Andy's point, the shiny letters, generative AI or AI. I mean, the vast majority of our demos, somewhere in them had AI or generative AI as part of the demo itself and or the working prototypes that were on the floor. And, I would say for us, it was more about driving value to the customer and what does the customer need to be able to do and how can that be accomplished by utilizing AI, not just using AI for AI's sake, which I feel like maybe was happening before that.
And where I was trying to lead this question was there are so many tools out there now. And we all know that live streaming is still complicated. And it has been forever, but it I guess what I'm saying, AI is making it easier, but how do you judge which tools to use and which tools not to use? There's so many out there now that we have model sprawl and overload.
Yeah, look, I mean, from AWS perspective, I of course am going to talk about, Amazon Bedrock and model choice, right? Because that's what's important to us in providing choice to our customers. And so, we look at something like Bedrock being able to your point, there's a different model for every use case just about now. So we want customers to be able to utilize the models that they want for the right use cases and the right type of model. And so that's where we kind of look at Bedrock being that foundation to be able to plug in what you need to use to accomplish your task or your goal.
Yeah, and I think that's the right way to look at it, Steph. I think getting select about models right now is sort of a poor decision because they are commoditizing extremely quickly. I think we all got very used to a world where, innovations were sort of a year-long to even 2-year-long task, and now we're in a like 6-month time frame of like every 6 months. I feel like there's new AI pricing and new AI features that I have to go relearn. And so and that's not going to slow down for the foreseeable future. We're just going to see more of it right now. So I think staying nimble and having a framework that allows you to easily swap out models is important because you don't want to get tied to something that either has is lacking the features you want, but probably more importantly is lacking the new pricing that it comes through and is available until we hit a little more of a plateau with it, which I think is still a number of years off before we really see a plateau in sort of the innovation cycle of what we can get from a model. So that framework, something like Bedrock, Azure has a similar one that they have as well. But having that agent-based workflow is a good starting point because it allows you to plan the orchestration, much the way that we were doing with live workflows
Yeah.
already,
Yeah.
but swap in and out parts as you see updates come through.
Yeah, I think that's the part where, again, it benefits the people who think about it all the way through first, and then being able to architect the right way, and then swapping out the underlying bedrock as you need it. Because how do you create the prompts? How do you create that agentic workflow? How do you create the orchestration agents and tell them what to do? If you haven't thought that through, then you're just going to get garbage in and garbage out from that scenario. One thing I wanted to touch on the live streaming side of it. I was talking to some friends on the video QoE space. I presented my problem to one of the AI models, and it came up with a new something called an isolation tree, which I never heard of or thought about. I'm sure the data scientists know about it, but a mechanism. I've always thought about looking at QoE metrics for live streams and looking at first defining what normal is and looking at like the hundreds of dimensions or the hundreds of permutations of how you're looking at QoE metrics, and then it just out of the blue said, "Hey, have you looked at isolation trees?" And it's a mechanism to actually define and look for those spikes in certain uh, device version, ad strategy, CDN combination where it's seeing something that's abnormal. And now all of a sudden you can find issues and start tackling them a lot faster. And it was just an incredible thing that I never thought about it. I haven't seen it inside products, and it's a direction that you can go to help get a little bit better and start like fixing your QoE issues.
And Bhavesh, that leads us right into the next question I was preparing was what are some of the most overlooked opportunities that AI could be used for today? I know you had the isolation trees as a comment. What's everybody else's, or even you, Bhavesh, more thoughts? There's obvious places you'd think AI could be being utilized, and it's just not. What do you think?
I think I just wanted to finish my thought about that one.
Go for it.
That's just something that at least, when people are thinking through how just to even be able to talk to a system that has basically zipped up half of the internet, depending on what model it is, and you're able to ask it questions and it can reach through the dredges of its memory and come up with some ideas and kind of pull that together for you. As long as you kind of guide it in the right query, you can find out and learn about things, and then all of a sudden you've got another direction to research that you might never have thought about before. I think it's just having these conversations with a chat model is actually very, very beneficial just for day-to-day stuff. Sorry, I think I stepped on somebody.
No, you're fine. I was gonna jump in and say there was actually a question in the queue that sort of led to the direction that I was thinking, which is I'm seeing it get used for detecting the ad spots more and more. This is an area where there's definitely interest. This has been a relatively manual process to date. Someone with the big red button making sure that we cut over at the right time. But invariably, the metadata never flows through all the systems the way you want it to, and something gets stripped out, and so you just end up with multiple people having to watch through a pipeline to ensure that you get that ad placement spotted. There's absolutely ways to detect it, but of course they're even doing more nuanced elements where they're trying to add contextual advertising to it so that it's taking the last 20 seconds of transcript and using that to inform what the ad could be as part of the experience.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say, were you at you must have been on the show floor and at our booth, Andy, because that sounds like a bunch of those demos that we had on the show floor. Yes, I think yes to both of you. And then I also think maybe some areas around predictive analytics to scale up and down cloud-based resourcing kind of comes to mind, right? The models now allow us to anticipate both routine and unexpected spikes, excuse me, in viewing and being able to optimize cloud resources appropriately. So I think that's one area, excuse me, that maybe is going underlooked or overlooked, I guess is the term. I'd also say, like, we're seeing customers start to do live script generation for commentators. And it's happening in pockets, right? And I think that could be better adopted and become more mainstream. But if you think about like sporting events and things like this, the volumes of data and the stats that can be synthesized to assist in a better storytelling motion, for the consumer, or the viewer, the fan. So I think those are areas where you're seeing it happen, but maybe could also become a little more mainstream than it is today.
Right.
I think one of the underlying things inside here, by the way, is the fact that in order to do all those types of things, you have to have trustworthy metadata. I think that's underlying to everything that you guys are talking about. And how does AI actually help you get to that trustworthy metadata so you can start applying some of these higher logic systems like, hey, like let me put an ad here, or let me figure out what the presenter should say next. I think how do companies start using AI to help them build out that metadata in the first place so that they have something to build upon? And I think it'll benefit the companies that already have that in place, or at least a process in place.
And to that, with Bhavesh, you walked right into the next topic I was going to bring up. You said accurate metadata, and I noticed one of Andy's notes was the bottleneck is really compute its confidence, but then you turned around and said the inverse is true. So let's both expand on that. I mean, you never want to put full trust, but I'll let the experts talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, look, I think quality of data can be a bottleneck, and I put in the chat that data is fuel for AI. That this is a common thing. One of the early things that we saw when people wanted to start adopting AI was they weren't necessarily bringing all of their data estates to it. They just wanted to drop AI in and have it magically work. And without that context, you're not going to get very far with it. And having high enough quality data that you get the results that you're expecting becomes part of the process. Before it even gets into an operational state, one of the early tests is really running through the use cases to make sure that you have the right data to do the types of problem solving you want with the AI. Otherwise, the better project for you to work on is improvement to the data before you do any implementation of AI.
Yeah, I think, look, having transparent workflows, good data, being able to, share kind of that data and the right tools with the right folks in each department, right? Because like a lot of you look at a lot of these streaming teams, they're made up of a lot of different departments, right? And so I think quality, making sure the stuff is free from like the factual errors and things like that, still having human in the loop systems is still, I think, important, and being able to have audit trails and being able to make sure you understand where that content was created from, what data it was created from, and that content provenance, so to speak, right? And be able to have that trust and accountability of where that data has come from. I think all of those things are super important, and will build the trust in the outputs.
And then I think not necessarily inverse take, I agree with you, but so mine's more of the evolutionary take, which is what happens when you finally have a system that you think you can trust. Like right now, if the AI is 60% confident in its answers, anybody with normal experience can kind of look at it and say, yep, that's wrong. The human in the loop can reject something over there. Once you get to the point where you are now putting 99% confidence or 99.9% confidence, what's the level of expertise required to know that it's hallucinating at that 99.99 level when it finally makes a decision and you're like, oh, okay, I don't get it. And the vast majority of the people who are experts in the industry who are going to be like, oh, that looks fine. But only like the most experienced person can look at it and say, this is wrong. How do you get to the point where you don't become overconfident and let too many decisions get made? And at what point do you hit that boundary where now a human being with all this experience can't tell when it's hallucinating?
And I've got an example of that. And one of my projects I'm working on just to train myself and learning myself is ingesting Major League Baseball box scores for a game and then have an AI write it like they're a sports writer. And I mean, I am feeding everything directly in from MLB, every stat possible to try to keep it from hallucinating. And I checked one the other day and it was still from the guy, the model made up a game from pictures that the Royals haven't had for 4 years against a team they play once a year. And apparently it was the rubber match of a 1 game series. So the hallucinations, while that's a very simple example, is frustrating at all levels. It's like you can't step back and just assume everything's going to be right because it's not. We're not at that point yet, which then brings us, this was going to be the last question, but we're going to make it the question now, is this kind of demonstrates why humans are not being replaced, correct? Aren't we still very critical to this workflow?
Oh, very much so. I mean, it really is an automation tool at the end of the day, and it's freeing up the cycles that we've done repetitive tasks. But creative choice and creative decisions still very much take a human in that loop in order to get to the piece, but it also we have to backstop and we have to check it. I think one of the things that we're finally starting to get better about is having a more critical eye. We're not just taking everything with a grain of salt that comes out to the exercise that you went through with it. As we look for ways to mitigate both the mistakes and the errors that it naturally makes, because it's still ultimately incredibly new technology.
Yeah, I agree. I think, look, AI is really good right now for those repetitive, rule-based tasks, right? Decision trees, automation, tasks with high volume data analysis. Like media supply chain is one example, right? Of, I think one of the more mainstream solutions for the metadata extraction and the scene break detection. You were talking about ad break detection, right? Captioning and translation and, highlight generation, those types of things. I think that those are good for those like repetitive rule-based type things. But AI can augment creativity, but it doesn't replace it, right? Humans still have to be involved. Same thing with strategy, right? I don't think, AI is going to come up with your strategy and what you're trying to accomplish, and complex decision making. And so there's a lot of nuances there. So yeah, humans are still very much so, shaping narratives and storytelling to fans. I think there's still a lot there that humans have to be involved in.
But it takes some maturity and thought to understand that humans need to be in the loop. And you might run into situations where within companies, all they care about is budget. And they think that AI is the magic wand to reduce headcount and just replace people with the system without thinking through what they're actually doing. That's still going to happen. And I think you might see that. I think you've already seen a couple companies now who are about backtracking on their human replacement processes because they didn't think it all the way through and they're realizing that they're destroying their own brand. Um, it's got to be a well thought process to figure out what are you going to use AI for, and if you jump headlong in the wrong program, you're going to pay for it in the future.
I think a good example of all of that is, again, I've had plenty of time to go deep down into the rabbit hole of AI, and you hear all the time now, at least in the programming world, about vibe coding. And I don't, yeah, I'm using those tools, I'm learning, and I learned a new language, but I also have been a programmer for 25 years. And structure between languages doesn't change that much. Little nuances do, but the logic. And I've seen these vibe tools go off on a tangent, whereas I had to reel them back in and say, no, that goes against everything in programming. I've got a master's degree in programming. It's like, no, no, stop. So you just wonder, these vibe products that are putting out, and a lot I've seen companies hiring vibe coders, and it's like, if you don't know anything about coding, that's just a recipe for disaster. Even just a basic understanding of coding. Um, and I know that's complex for some people because I used to teach PHP at the college level, and there's some people that just can't grasp the way a computer thinks. And that's the same thing with our tools. I mean, it all comes down to zeros and ones and structure. So that's my soapbox, which I will now jump
I
off
mean,
of.
if you look back at like take AI out of the picture and just think back to like when uh nonlinear editors got so democratized and we suddenly had so many more options out there to use, we got a lot more content. It didn't mean we got a lot of good content. We got some great content, but we got a lot of bad content along the way.
Yeah.
And I think of what you're describing as sort of the AI version of that. Yes, we have a lot of we democratized programming to a certain degree, and now you can describe what you want and have a system build you, a simple JavaScript or some other piece that would have taken, weeks or months for someone to figure out how to get working on their own. It doesn't make it all good, but it does open up a world of people who maybe wouldn't have had the access to do it before. And again, it sort of takes us as people and actually as educators. I'm glad you called out sort of college as part of it because we've spent a lot of time training the how technique part of things, particularly in media schools and media studies. A lot of it is learning the tools of the day. We're going to have to double down on the why and the philosophy behind doing something because we're now going to be moved up the stack and we're going to let the tools automate and do things. And we need to know the reason why we're having it do that thing.
But I think if you go beyond that boundary layer where you can't tell if it's hallucinating or not, then you're in deep trouble. That's when you're in the deep end of the pool of AI with vibe coding, where you're having it do things where it's like, oh my God, it works. Yes, it works. But did you know that you've got a massive security hole now because you didn't think through X, Y, and Z? Like there's so many things that are inside there. And if you don't have that experience, you're going to put something out in production that you should not trust. I've used it for small little things. I saw somebody talked about EPG inside there. I had an AI model just point to the OpenEPG standard and create a SQL schema for it and push that out there. It's good for little things like that where you can have it augment or get you a couple steps ahead and save a bunch of time. But I don't think it's something that you can just vibe code complete applications for without having the right level of expertise and experience.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I have it do things that I hate doing myself, like creating a database table in schema.
Mhm.
It's like I can look at it and see if they got it right, but I don't want to sit there and do it myself. That takes me an hour, and he spits it out. It spits it out 30 seconds, if that long. So
Yeah.
again, it's the mundane, the repetitive task is where we're at right now. And Bhavesh, you brought up EPG, and I saw that comment as well. And we haven't talked much about the client side of this. We're talking about a lot about what makes our lives easier, but is there anything you're seeing that a client would automatically get off this, even if it's not the discovery phase, which I've been talking about discovery and it being broken for 15 years now on these panels. But where are the client improvements? Is there anything is there anything that a client, obviously latency, all these things that 5 years ago I did a panel, why are we still talking about this stuff? There's things there, but is there anything that's very obvious to help on the client side?
Yeah, I mean, so I see a number of experiments with AI driven user experiences in streaming apps that are emerging. Uh, Being able to, a number of the set-top boxes are powerful enough to even run versions of some of these lighter weight models locally, which helps with the latency piece. To if you're too reliant on a large one for a cloud-based system, and you're trying to stream, it's going to impact the the usability of it overall. But there absolutely are people that are experimenting with versions of it that allow you to have real-time alternate tracks, be able to potentially even switch cameras for you if a production is set up to support it. The direction that a lot of it will go is around discoverability. I'm with you on that one. It's been very much a broken task. But it's going to take a platform. It's the Amazons, the Apples, the others that are going to probably be in the best position to help aggregate some of those discoverability pieces as we see it emerge. I think the stuff that VLC just came out with, where they can now do with their open source tooling, live subtitles and translations on the fly, will bring a lot of bring a wider array of content. No more hunting down the subtitle files or the other pieces to try and
Definitely.
watch some obscure piece. So that lends itself to even more content being out there. And again, another thing that makes it easy for someone that's publishing their content to know that there's an opportunity to leverage a tool like this to find a wider audience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think also about, so with all the examples that you gave, Andy, like I'll use a tour, the PGA Tour as an example too, just on the AI commentary. They've put now in their Tourcast app or their Tourcast product, right? And they wanted to feature like unique camera angles and advanced ball tracking. And what they did and wanted to create was like an AI generated multilingual commentary. And so they pulled in all their data, right? And were able to use, again, for us, they used Bedrock, and picked LLMs to do a bunch of different pieces, and generated like a context-based narrative commentary that their fans could use, and delighting in their fans and immersing them in the action of their favorite players, right? And so I think there's lots of different ways that you're going to see the applicability during live streams, whether it's a second experience, an alternate experience, like we were showing Beyond Sports, took a hockey game and made little cartoon characters, had little cartoon characters actually playing the game, and it was all based on what was happening on the ice. But they were little cartoon characters. So I think you're going to see a lot of really neat applications that are either great for the fan immersion, fan experience, or operational, like we've been talking about.
And then what happens when, to Andy's point about some models now can be run on devices. What happens in the near future when it becomes so powerful that everyone has their own models running on all their devices? How do you now create a product where you can do discoverability, but now you can do agent to agent, where you can have a system running centrally, communicating to an agent running on somebody's device, which can then communicate to your app, and now create your own mini EPG. You can create your own mood watching or whatnot, or manage things locally. I think we still have an amazing future where we still need to imagine what's going to be like when the power and the capabilities are down to the user level.
And Bhavesh, you kind of hit on one of our questions that's in the Q&A. And it was actually flowing into what I was going into to wrap up. Again, we're getting close to the Q&A session. If you have any, please drop them in that box. But Paul asked, will agentic AI have a role in live cloud streaming workflows? And as I'm looking at our notes, we've got one and another great title from Andy. No wonder he's a writer. We're moving from automate to orchestrate, and the rise of AI agents. You want to speak on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've highlighted. I think Steph had great use cases around this using Bedrock for being able to pull in an agent. An agent really is just a persona that is trained to respond a specific way to action. So you're just setting up a scenario that says, I always want you doing this. I don't care that you know 1,000 other things. You're not doing my geometry homework. You're looking for black frames in this file. Alert me with this response every time you get it. That's just an agent. You're simply setting off a task and firing it off and letting it respond repeatedly. So I think everything we've talked about by and large in this talk, there's probably a version of an agent, particularly for a live scenario, where there's a lot of value in pulling it together. And again, I think it always comes down to the things that are highly mundane and repetitive, that are easy to automate are the first steps for doing it. Not to say that's by the only place it's going to go. And I think part of the power, and maybe this is an area Steph can talk about, is where it's the power of bringing those multi-agent scenarios together, where you've got agents that are cascading a set of functions before it has to come back to the human as part of it.
Yeah, yeah. So think about your black frame example, right? Wouldn't it be great if, after X number of frames of black frame automatically, right, switch camera, or if we're noticing some kind of spikiness, and we do this today in some of our media live products, right? We're already switching regions, right? So you're not hit or subject to failures during the stream. So I think there's a varied degree of all the way down to the operational level of how you can, utilize these agents to keep your systems up and running and to keep you, so to speak, on air, right? All the way to, doing more creative, like camera angle switching and whatnot when you have black frame detection. So yeah, I mean, agentic I would love to say it's coming, but it's here, right? We're already
It's here.
seeing people using it. We're already seeing customers stringing agents together. But like I said, some are in the early phases still, and that's totally okay. I mean, some are trying to get to the task-based, one-off, let's build an agent and do this. And eventually, yes, it's going to be all fully orchestrated workflows for probably every
And
single line of business happening in the media and entertainment space.
Let's
you got to bring in cost into this as well too. Sorry, Rob. Because you don't necessarily you don't want to have your, you know, 70 billion parameter model acting as your foundation for an agent that's only looking for black frames. You have to look at speed and efficiency and cost for all that as well too. So you really have to be diligent in terms of saying and training to say, I'm going to have a lightweight agent that's going to be able to react instantly. It doesn't need to Andy's point, it doesn't need to know your geometry homework. It's been trained and it knows exactly what to do, and it's very lightweight, and it becomes a lower cost as well too as you try to scale all these agents around here.
all great points. We're bumping up against the Q&A questions, so I'm going to ask the panelists one more question, and then we'll move on to the questions that are in the Q&A. We started this session almost an hour ago with where is AI right now, this very second, in the cloud streaming workflow. So the question that we're going to end with is, where do you see it in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years? What do you see as the future in the workflow as the models evolve and get stronger? And just put on your Nostradamus hat, and what do you see coming down the pipe? Let's start with Steph.
Yeah, wow. I think if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I would have said, agentic was further off than it is now. And so, like I said, it's here now and it will continue to evolve. I think you're going to see better accuracy coming out of these models. So, I think about things like speech accuracy, translation accuracy, like naturalness. These are all things that I think are going to continue. Like I was just in India 2 weeks ago, right? There's 22 different languages, I think, in India, and like dialects, like multiples more, right? So I think
Thousands.
accurate, yeah, thousands, right?
Mhm.
So I think accuracy is going to continue to get, better and more nuanced with each passing week. I think also, we did at a couple of events now, we've done these like proto boxes. They are like a live hologram with the likeness of someone in it. And so at NAB, as an example, we had F1's analyst Ruth Buscombe in there. Well, she wasn't in the box, but like her likeness was in the box, and you could Q&A with her. And while she was not robotic whatsoever by any stretch, there's definitely still room to improve and grow on that naturalness, that it looks real and conversational and actual, versus knowing you're talking to a prototype. So I think those are, to me, some of the things that, as I think about, how this continues to evolve, is it'll start becoming more seamless and more natural.
Bhavesh?
I think the seamless and natural part is going to come from the foundation of that is going to be the new protocols that are coming out. Like Google's got their agent-to-agent protocol, Anthropic with their master model context protocol, MCP, to allow these systems, disparate systems, no matter where they are on the internet, to now be able to communicate and allow that workflow to evolve beyond just the self-enclosed LLM that you're working off of. Now suddenly it has tools and the ability to act, has agency outside of itself. I don't even think like it's going to be exponential growth, and I don't think my human mind can figure out what can happen as people start creating solutions upon solutions in 6 months to 1 year. You're going to get to the point where you have to start thinking like, what happens when there's democratization of these components, where suddenly you no longer have to be a large corporation. All these tools, all these amazing ideas that you thought were out of your stratospheric costs earlier, now suddenly are daily manageable costs tomorrow. What can you do with your company at that point?
Andy?
Well, Bhavesh stole mine, so I
Oh,
feel
I'm sorry.
I feel mildly slighted, but I totally agree with his comment on MCP, Model Context Protocol. Is sort of the new AI buzzword at the moment. It's even overtaken agentic workflows. That's so last month, in comparison to MCP. But this notion of sort of anything with a defined API schema, which a lot of things have now, effectively being able to be controlled by an AI service or an AI agent, is huge, because it just brings further automation to an overall system, because you don't have to wait for Grass Valley to suddenly add AI pieces to it. You can just have your agent dial in and do the changes and the pieces that you need as part of it. So I think that's going to radically change. Again, it comes back to that we're moving away from the how of a thing for the person to focus on, and more of the why at the end of the day, that you would want to make a change or do a thing.
Great. And so let's move on. I see a few Q&A in here that's really good to hit on. Here's one that I find interesting because, with the broadcasting background and accounting background, I've always asked who's going to, when are the bean counters going to come to roost? With live streaming alone being, Kate asks, with live streaming alone being resource intensive, how do you see the industry handling the additional load presented by AI models?
So, I, I would just say, we as a vendor, right, are prepping. We've been prepping for the AI wave to hit. So I'm trying to figure out exactly maybe what the genesis, or what the real question behind it is. But I think all vendors are ensuring that we've got the right capacity and background to be able to handle the infrastructure requirements that are coming in from customers on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think what's important with that one to remember is that AI isn't just being stood up or provisioned for media. I mean, everything we're talking about here, I'm sure there's a healthcare conference that's having the same conversation. There's an education conference, there's a manufacturing conference. So it's hitting us everywhere all at once. And that is driving the scale engine, not just the media component. We are getting to take advantage of it. And I think you've seen so much optimization in the IP-based live streaming pipelines over the last decade that now is a good time to start looking at where AI fits into it.
Anything to add, Bhavesh?
No, I think those guys had great answers for you.
Okay.
I stole Bhavesh's this time.
Okay. Okay.
There you go.
This next question from Jeff goes off range a little bit, and I've got my own definite opinions on this, but his question is, and Andy, you might be able to approach this one the best. Why do so many camera manufacturers mislabel computer vision implementations as AI? Is it just a lack of understanding what AI is?
It is real bad marketing is what it comes down to, most likely. I think AI is such a catch-all at this point for actual AI, generative AI, plain old machine learning. It just gets caught up in the marketing hype more than anything, because when you're trying to describe the feature, you try to find the easiest words to describe it, and everybody knows what AI is right now, unfortunately. The nuance comes in unpacking what is really meant by that terminology.
Yeah, that's much nicer way to say what I was going to say. Mateo asks, do you see AI making its way more and more into cross-systems analysis for quality of service, quality of experience monitoring?
I think I spoke briefly about that earlier on in the conversation about how it can be really an amazing tool to start looking for different type of anomaly detection scenarios. I think when you're looking at holistic error rates or rebuffer rates, etc., it's very easy to see a spike. But when you start having, hundreds of thousands to a million concurrents, an impact that's an event that might impact 100,000 people is significant, but it might not show up in the statistics unless you've got something that can detect it at that minute level. And I think that's where it can help you come up with different models and different meaning data research models to actually find where those little spikes are inside your QoE data lake.
Agree. And we're going to finish up with one more question. Cardi Kia, I believe is how you pronounce the name. And I know we touched on this probably very early in the session, and some of the agianic, I can't talk anymore, also was there. But the question is AI helping in detecting ads without any reference to back-end ad servers? And if yes, what is the accuracy?
So I can definitely say yes on that. Like, I think in the last at least 3 different shows like NAB and IBC, we've been showing how we utilize our media supply chain and the back end pipelines, and we've got a solution called Media to Cloud solution to show things like ad break detection, which is very accurate. I'd say I'd go as far as to say as just as good as having a human sitting there pushing buttons for ad break.
I'd argue humans weren't that accurate to begin
with.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I ran into this more in because I spent a lot of time sort of comparing the accuracy of transcription for against sort of AI versus humans, and at the end of the day, the humans weren't actually that accurate. They were just more accountable than a machine at the end of the day. And I think that's probably what it comes down to with the ad detection as well. I think the only elements I saw was where it was overly predictive or overly aggressive about trying to jump to an ad break before the actual ad break was there, more than anything.
I think the one part that people are overlooking is ad breaks in sporting content, and I've helping create the big red button for the Olympics in 2010 and beyond that, it became the human beings who had to be trained on every sport individually to know what is the right time to throw in a 15-second, 1 minute, 2 minute break inside there. You can't, it's too much of an effort to train an AI to do something like that when a human being can do it so much faster and actually have the context for what they're trying to do.
And with that, we are just a little bit over. I see Steve pop back in. Again, thank you, everybody. Thanks to the panelists. It was great discussion. I enjoyed every minute of it. I'm back at 2. Andy, I saw you're back tomorrow, right? Or are you at 4?
I think I've got another one today, but then I've got a couple tomorrow as well. So I'll be in and out. But good to see you, Rob, and great to see you, Steph and Bhavesh.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you all so much. It's been a great
Thanks,
conversation. Thanks,
Rob.
thanks, Rob, Steph, Bhavesh, Andy, been excellent. Before we go, we do have our gift card winner. The winner is Paul Faleo, who correctly identified Ad Lib Blues by Lester Young and the Oscar Peterson trio. And we'll be back, as Rob mentioned, at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 Pacific Time for Deep Data, leveraging actionable analytics to optimize live streams. Hope to see you then.